Good morning. Today is the 26th day of the first Adar and the 6th of March. We're up to the fourth reading of Parashat Vayak'hel. And in today's reading, we have a very interesting phrase that appears twice and a little bit of a variation each time. We hear in Exodus 36:13. You remember that this has to do with a topic that we went over 2 weeks ago. He then made 50 gold clasps and joined the two sets of tapestries to each other with the clasps, so that the tabernacle became one. It's a very interesting phrase. The tabernacle became one. Really, what it should have said was that, the way that people render it, that the cover became one. But here it says the whole tabernacle became one. And then a little bit later, in verse 18, we have another similar statement. He made 50 copper clasps to couple the tent together and make it one. This idea of the Mishkan becoming one, of the tabernacle becoming one, has a lot to do with what the tabernacle comes to represent. The tabernacle and everything that's included in it is meant to be a microcosmos of all of creation. It's meant to encompass within it all the different variations within creation. And so the statement, maybe we'll say a few more words about that. It says about Bezalel, who was the chief artisan who created the vessels and all the special parts of the tabernacle, that he knew how to permute and how to connect the letters with which the world was created. Now, this is a topic a lot of people know about this, that the sages had this outlook that the letters in the Hebrew alphabet, which form the words that they do, are like the building blocks of creation. It's like that when you take, for instance, a word like tree, Ayin Tzadik. So you took the words Ayin and Tzadik, the letters Ayin and Tzadik, and you put them together. That's like energetically creating the tree. And that everything else in the world is also created through these permutations, through these connection between letters and permutations. Now, how exactly or why this would work in the material world, I'm not sure. Although we have something similar to that today, where we treat the elements, the chemical elements, as like building blocks from which through which the materials in the world are created. Everything in the world is somehow created out of these atoms that are elemental. We have a very similar thing in mathematics, which we use a lot in our work, but we haven't discussed this very many times. But when you think about it, there are two types of numbers. There are those that are prime and those that are composite. The difference between a prime number and a composite number is that prime numbers cannot be divided further into whole numbers. And composite numbers are always a product of either two or more prime numbers. So in a certain sense, the prime numbers are like the elements of all the integer numbers. So for instance, if I'm taking 20, 20 is a composite number, so it's 2 times 2 times 5. So I have there 2, 2, and 5, which are the elements that create the number 20. If I would take 40, it would be another 2, 2, 2, 2, and 5. And so on. 17 is a prime number, so there's nothing, it's an element, as it were. And so this idea that there are elements out of which we create the composition of reality is very common. We probably mentioned this, I don't remember though, that the place where language is really the building block of all you see is in the psyche. A person's psychology is only as robust as the language that they use. Now, that's a very interesting idea, that really when we talk about language, we're talking first and foremost about how language affects our psychological being. So for instance, you might see a very simple person, someone who's not very learned, but they have in their mind a formulation in language that tells them, for instance, never give up. And that is very, very strong in them. It's like maybe it's the only thing that they really adhere to in their minds. And so their whole psychological makeup could be based on this one sentence. Of course, if you would cause a person like that to give up for some reason, it could be that they would literally lose their mind. They wouldn't be able to cope with anything. So really the robustness of our ability to survive in the world is dependent on the constructs inside of us. And certainly when we're not talking about just survival, when we're talking about depth, when we're talking about understanding, compassion, all these things require a very wide and expansive experience of language. And once that's created in the person, then he has those categories, or she has those categories, and can apply them. And the psychology of the person becomes robust and expansive, and it can be giving and caring and compassionate and so on. This all depends on language. So getting back to Bezalel, it says that he knew how to permute the letters with which the heavens and the earth were created. In other words, what the sages are saying here is that the tabernacle was meant to be a microcosmos of the entire cosmos. That everything that went into the creation of reality also went into the creation of the tabernacle. The formation, the work, the artistry, and so on, was trying to capture the essence of the cosmos. What is the purpose of the cosmos? So we know that the sages also say something very interesting. They say on the third account of creation, there's three accounts, as you know, these are the chronicles of the heavens and the earth when they were created. The word when they were created, Behi Bar'am, they say permutes to spell Be'avraham, with Abraham. They don't mean to say that his soul was the progenitor of the world. What they mean to say is that the world was based on Abraham's essential character trait, which is loving kindness. That the world was meant to be built on loving kindness. We even have a verse like this in Psalms. It says, Olam chesed yibaneh, the world shall be constructed out of loving kindness, or shall be built out of loving kindness. So Abraham is seen as the gluing force that brings reality together. It's loving kindness that brings it together. In Hebrew, we don't usually say that Abraham, or we don't just say that Abraham is loving kindness. We say that he is love itself. And the love itself in Hebrew is ahava. And what is the purpose of love? It is the purpose of bringing things together and making them one. So here we've taken a little bit of a roundabout route, but gotten to the understanding that the tabernacle became one. That statement is like saying that it's reached its purpose, it's achieved its goal of becoming one. And if the tabernacle is one, then there is a chance that all of creation, of which it's only a microcosmos, so that the entire cosmos will become one. And the whole idea of becoming one is that is how creation begins to express and illustrate God's oneness. And we've talked about this in a political sense in the past, that without monotheism, there can't really be peace in the world, because only when you have a monotheistic God, when you have a conception of God as being unified, as being one, despite the many myriad creatures that he's created, and the many different points of view that he's created, nonetheless he's still one. That statement is meant to ingrain in us that we as human beings, despite the fact that we have so many perspectives and are so different from one another, we can still become one. in the same way that the tabernacle here becomes one. And the secret to that is that the word one and the word love have the same value, 13. One is Aleph Chet Daled, that's 13, and Ahava, Aleph Hey Bet Hey, is also 13. So this is a beautiful statement that appears in this in today's teaching, but it's more than that. And we'll end with this idea, even though we can't develop it. I encourage you to look at the article. That love is not just something that brings together; it's also something that is used to fuel creativity. The purpose of the tabernacle was not only to bring people together, it was also to respect their diversity in the sense that each person has a different role to play in reality. And that's what the tabernacle was supposed to do. It was supposed to communicate or create a communication channel between God and man, allowing man to hear what exactly is it that my mission in life is, what exactly is my role that I need to play. If I think about it in those terms, then the love that was invested in reality, the love that was invested, this labor of love that was invested in the creation of the tabernacle, in the ability to bring people together, and specifically this would happen, people would have these inspirational moments when many people gathered together in the courtyard, when there were many people together. What it's saying is that love has the ability to bring something down from beyond, which is exactly what we call the creative process. The creative process is when someone is either drawing or playing music or writing or whatever kind of human expression they're using, and they feel inspired by something higher. That is part of what the tabernacle was meant to do, not just to bring everyone together in love, but also through love to create inspiration, to create a process of creativity that allows that which cannot be expressed to be expressed. So with that, we'll end today, and I encourage you to look at the article. Again, the articles, all the articles of Wonders, hopefully every week, are available on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Galeinai, Galeinai, and I hope to see you tomorrow, God willing. All the best.